Hey everybody, it's me, Sam Tom from the future. This intro is going to be on multiple videos, so if you think you've accidentally clicked the same one twice, you probably haven't. I guess maybe you have, but you might not. So if you are watching this, you're about to watch me talk about Resident Evil. But here's the problem. When I started recording, I thought I was going to talk about all 6 movies in one video. Turned out that would have been a 2-hour long video. So at some point I decided I would break it up into 2 videos. Still would have been pretty long. So I got big brain and decided to do one video every day for a week leading up to my video about the new Resident Evil. So Resident Evil number 1, that video will go up on Sunday, and then there will be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then on Saturday my video for the new Resident Evil will pop up. So, deep breaths, deep breaths. At some point in the videos that you're going to see, I will mention everything being in one video. At some point I'll talk about it being 2 videos. At some points I'm going to be like, we'll be right back in a second with my thoughts on the next one. And then the video is going to be over because past me didn't know what he was talking about. So this is future me explaining to you the situation. So this intro is going to be in all 6 videos. Feel free to skip it if you click around. I'm not going to put cards in every video because cards are frustrating, but I will put the links to all the Resident Evils as they get published. I'm sorry, all my videos about the Resident Evil movies as they get published in the description, and I will have a playlist link at the end of each video so that as you get to the end of one, you can easily find the next one. Oh my goodness, I'm talking way too fast. By the way, this is the higher part of the shelf that I sit in front of. These are where all my DC things are. So, hope you enjoy listening to me rant about zombies for a long time. Thank you. Alright, we are talking about Resident Evil Afterlife, the 4th of 6 films on my Resident Evil binge. Pretty cut and dry. This is my least favorite one so far. Which, you know, you could say, well, if you're watching them all in a row, maybe you're just getting tired of them. But I think I liked the 3rd one the best, I think. Better than 2 for sure. So I don't think that's the case. Also, I watched 3 of them yesterday, and this was the first one that I watched today. So this is the longest break I've had between them. So I don't think it's fatigue. I think I just didn't like this one as much. But let's get into my notes. For the most part, the movies actually seem pretty standalone, which I think is interesting and impressive. Certainly you understand more if you've seen them all, but thinking about what actually happens in 2... I don't think you really need to see what happened in 1. She kind of explains to the new characters when she meets up with them that she used to work for them, and you get the sense that she's had experience before. So I think it helps to have seen the first one, but I don't think it's necessary. And then the 3rd one has a big time jump. And then this one picks up on the plot lines from the 3rd one with wanting to go to Alaska and things like that, and her taking down the different facilities. But that doesn't really drive the movie. So I think it's well done that they can all kind of stand on their own. And, you know, you don't need to be someone like me who watches all of them in a row to get something out of the movie. You might get more out of the movie, but I think they all can work individually also. We'll see if that continues into 5 and 6. Okay, the Umbrella Idiots continue their experiments even after they've caused a global apocalypse. So I mentioned after part 3, like, it took a global apocalypse for them to be concerned for themselves. But I did mention they're still continuing to experiment. And at the time, it seemed like it was mainly that one doctor, so maybe Umbrella as a whole wasn't doing it. But now this guy that seems to be in charge of everything, he's still doing experiments. You find out, at the end of the movie that he's been altered. It's unclear how long that's been going for, but it's just like, come on, guys. Accept that you're in over your head. Knock this off. I wrote, Goodbye, Batman. Hello, Captain Cold. So both Jason O'Mara, who voiced Batman and played the dude with the sunglasses, and the guy who played Bruce Wayne in Titans, who's one of the doctors for Umbrella, they're both gone in this movie, but, what is it, Wentworth Miller? Something, the guy that plays Captain Cold in The Flash is in. So we lose some heroes. We get another villain, anti-hero, whatever in. Also, I forgot to mention that I'm familiar with the girl that plays Claire from Heroes. I don't remember much about her, but I binged Heroes back in the day. So she seems familiar to me, even though I don't remember much about her character in particular. Nothing to do with the movie. Just notes that I wrote down. At a certain point, I wrote down, I want to play HVZ. So I used to play some different types of human versus zombie games back in the day. And I think this was still towards the start of the movie, where the Alice clones are attacking the facility. And they just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. And it's just like, yeah, those are the kind of games that you never win. It's just how long can you survive. I want to play HVZ. I liked it. They showed in number 3 that the telekinesis drains her. So that's something that if they hadn't established, especially in this opening sequence where she's taken down this facility, I feel like the audience would ask, like, why doesn't she use her telekinesis more, right? Like, that's a big problem with Star Wars, is, like, so many times they could use different force powers to get out of their situations, and they just don't, because the movies aren't that good. So I'm glad that they established in 3, when we first see that she has telekinetic powers, that it puts a drain on her, it puts a strain on her, and she can't just do it all the time. And then they use that again here. Then I put Army of Alice's! So we had at the end of the 3rd one where I was questioning before I saw it, are we getting an Army of Alice's? And then they teased that we would. And now we do. We get Alice clones fighting. The main bad guy is lame. So I don't know if I just like the guy that played him in the 3rd movie better because I knew that guy. But it just seems that this actor is trying way too hard to seem cool and tough. And it doesn't come across at all. So I do not like the main bad guy in this movie. I don't think the actor does a very good job. Too much CGI. The last one was more practical. So yeah, this one, and it continues throughout the film. They keep trying to do these different types of zombies for no real reason. I mean, in story, I just assume that it's mutating and evolving over time, but it doesn't need to. There doesn't need to be more than one type of zombie. The one basic zombie is enough of a threat. It doesn't need to be any more than that. So they're only doing it so that they can try out more CG stuff. But when you do something solely for the sake of using CG, it doesn't look good and it doesn't age well. And so this movie looks worse than 3 does. But I think I mentioned, I think 3 is my favorite so far. And this one just throws way too many things at the wall, and not enough of them stick, which is sad and disappointing. So as she's attacking, or I think maybe before I had the thought, and then I wrote it down later, before she attacks the Tokyo facility, I think it's the Tokyo facility, I was kind of wondering in my head, I was like, I don't think this is what they did, just based on how things work in the real world, but I thought it would have been interesting to get one movie for each facility that we see her take down. Because the first movie, it all takes place in that one facility, the Hive. And I was like, I don't really want them to gloss over it, but I know that they're not going to give each one its own movie, because that doesn't really expand. It's just the same thing, and then the same thing, and then the same thing, but different. And audiences don't like that. So I knew we weren't going to get that. As soon as the clones popped up, and I was like, oh yeah, this is just going to be way too easy. So it's not going to take a full movie to show how she gets through these facilities. So I thought that this movie was going to be basically a series of set pieces of her going to different facilities and taking them down, and how are they slightly different and blah, blah, blah. But that's not it. We just see the one, and then we move on. And I think that was the right choice, because with all the clones, it's just not, there's not that many stakes. You don't really feel concerned for her, because you're like, oh, well, they're just clones, and she's got more clones, and blah, blah, blah. So I'm glad that they followed up with that from the 3rd movie, but I also think it was the right choice to get it done and out of the way early, and then move on to something else, even though the thing that they moved on to I didn't particularly enjoy. Then when the real clone, or the real Alice, who he somehow knows is the real one, is sneaky in his helicopter plane, whatever thing, when he leaves. And she goes up and she says, any last words? And I'm like, why wouldn't you just kill him? At no point, there's my Google.
I have a reminder for Sam Tom.
Reminding me to feed the dogs. At no point in the first 3 movies does she have, like, jokes or weird things that she says to people before she kills them. Like, that's not in her character. And it's just a stupid thing put in for story purposes so that he can get out of this situation. And it's dumb, and I hate it, and write better. Right? Maybe you want to save the reveal that he's a zombie for later so you don't want him to shoot him, but, you know, have him be smart enough to figure out that she's there so that she can't sneak up on him. And she thinks she's sneaking up on him, but then he gets the drop, right? Do something different. Don't have her say this thing for absolutely no reason that's completely out of character. Totally goes against the idea that she's the original Alice. Right? It seems like a fake Alice. So then after the crash, she's walking away, and I said human Alice because he's just now taken away all her powers, which I think was a good call story-wise, because if she's too overpowered, it becomes a Superman problem, and she's not interesting to watch anymore, so I was actually on board for that. But then I wrote, human Alice survives, but super bad guy dies, and we find out later that he doesn't, but it's stupid of her to walk away from that crash assuming that he's dead. And if she doesn't assume that he's dead, she shouldn't have walked away. She should have waited until he came out and then killed him. Again, they're doing things to this character that go against what we've seen in other films. She's been shown to be smart. She's been shown to be competent and clever and able to do certain things with what she's got in certain situations. So we're 0 for 2 right out of the gate with the real Alice in this movie, continuing her character arc from previous movies. Okay, picked up where the last movie ended. This stuff going to Alaska, so I like that. I like that they continued that thread because I thought that was interesting that, oh, maybe the zombies can't get to Alaska, so I'm glad that we got to see where that went. I put good pacing in these movies because I tend to check the time a lot in movies. Not necessarily because I'm bored, but maybe I've got something that I've got to do, or I've got dogs that are begging me for attention. So I just check the time on the movies a lot. How far are we into the movie? How much of the movie is left? And the last couple movies, like after the beginning is done, I check and I'm like, how far are we in? And it's always about 20 minutes. And then when the big action, whatever, seems to be done, like feels like we're going into the ending now, I check the time and it seems like there's about 15 or 20 minutes left. And so this 20-minute beginning, hour in the world, 20-minute wrap up, I think it's a good pace, and I think it has worked for these movies. Even though I didn't enjoy this movie as much, I think that setup still works. And I wish more movies would be okay being short. I don't know why so many movies feel the need to shove in so many more things to pad the runtime. It's counterintuitive because shortening the runtime means that you can play more in theaters, which means you can make more money without having to do any more work. So I don't know why so many movie studios think that their movies need to be longer. But anyway, point for this movie. At one point, she says that she's had no sign of life in, I think, like 100-something days. And I wrote down, does that include zombies? And then later on, as she's flying over Los Angeles, she specifies no sign of life, not even the undead. So to me, that means that her earlier comment was specifically talking about not the undead, and this time she's like, wow, even the undead I don't see. But then, of course, that's negated later because we find life and plenty of undead. She says at one point in this movie that it's 18 months after 3, which means we're somewhere between 6.5 to 7 years from the first movie. 18 months because the third one didn't end with like a direct setup. The 18-month time gap doesn't feel too long. I felt like the third one waited too long, 5 years after 2, where we had this setup where she's escaping with these guys, and how are they going to get out, and where are they going to go, and blah, blah, blah. And we don't get any of that answered. We just jump ahead 5 years. I feel like this time jump works. I feel like it makes sense story-wise, and we're still continuing that story. It doesn't seem like we've missed a whole lot. It just seems like she's been going around to facilities and wiping them out, and we see that, and we don't need to see that 5 or 6 times. We just need to see it once. So, again, I think there's a lot of things that this movie did better than 3, but for some reason I like 3 better than this one. I'm a hypocrite. I'm an oxymoron. I'm a contradiction. All right, what did I have? Not much action. So yeah, there's a big span of time in this movie where there's not much action. So when she leaves the Tokyo facility, we've got the helicopter thing, the crash. She walks away from there. She goes up to Alaska. You got the one little fight with Claire, which I wouldn't really call an action scene. It's more of a, what's going on with Claire? What's this spider thing? And then they fly down the coast. Nothing's happening. They get to LA. They find these people. You've got the sequence where she lands the plane. I wouldn't really call that an action sequence. But I guess maybe somebody would. And then they get out, and then we get this tour of this place, and we get all these things, and we're getting introduced to all these people, and it's a while before the zombies get in, and then we start getting action sequences again. And that might be why I didn't enjoy this one as much. The pacing of the story was good, but I don't think the pacing of the action and the threat was as good as it was in 3. Because in 3, we get the smaller stuff, like her in the gas station, her in the television station, and then we move to the stuff with the crows, and so there's like more zombie stuff throughout. Whereas this one, there's a pretty big gap of time. So that might be why I didn't respond to this one as well as the other ones. Okay, did all the clones die in Tokyo? So, it's not clear how many Alice clones there were. It's not clear how many went to the facilities with her. Right, there's a lot of questions about that. Did they attack every facility simultaneously? Did they go sequence 1 and 1? And it's not clear if any of them have survived. We know that one, so the original one, supposedly, survived on the helicopter airplane thing. But were all the rest of the clones down there? And did they all get wiped out in that pulse? Or are there more of them somewhere else? It's never referenced. It's never said. It's never answered. So that's confusing to me. Because it feels like if they were all gone, she would have said something. Or the villain would have said something about it. And if they're not all gone, seems like she should have gone and recruited some of them for whatever she was doing next. And I feel like, because I know how a lot of movies work, it's going to be a reveal in a future movie that there's still more Alice clones. But seeing that scene at the beginning of this one with all the Alice clones, it's like, that's not that entertaining to watch. So I hope they don't. But I wish they would address it at least. So that's up in the air. I like that they still dislike people that they're forced to survive with. So this producer guy that none of them like, you know, so many times in survival movies, it's like, oh, these people have bonded together because they had to survive, and they're like a family now. And it's just nice to be like, no, I hate that guy. You know, like we're both surviving and we're both here together, but I hate him. I can't stand him. So that was just kind of a nice change of pace from what most movies do. Slow-mo doesn't make something more exciting. So I think when Claire is fighting whatever the big giant zombie with the giant axes, that again, we have no reason for why that exists. But that whole fight scene is done in slow motion. And slow motion can highlight certain actions to draw them out, to build suspense. Slow-mo doesn't add excitement. Slow-mo slows the excitement down. And everything, you know, the zombies are coming in. These people, they've gotten the stuff from the armory. They're losing people. The zombies are closing in. They got to escape through the sewers. And everything just grinds to a halt as we get this super slow motion fight scene. that's not even that good. Like, it's not bad, but it did not need to be in slow motion. The slow motion adds nothing but time. And it took me out of it. It was just like, oh my gosh, how long is this going to last? How much of the movie is left? Why is it taking so long, right? It's not like he had a bunch of crazy cool weapons that the slow-mo helped see how they work. He had an axe. A big, giant axe. So that was... It drug the whole thing down for me. And I think that might be where I turned more sour than satisfied in this movie. I wrote, it's a trap! So let's go in! Because when they're on board the Arcadia, there's these big giant doors opening. They know that something's wrong. They realize that the crew has left, right? Things aren't what they seemed. And Claire literally says it's a trap as these big, huge doors that you don't know if you can control them or not open up to reveal this completely dark room. And they all just walk inside to what they think is a trap. And I'm like, why? Why would you do that? You've got flashlights. Shine the flashlight in there before you walk in there. Or just don't walk in there because you don't know what's in there. It felt so stupid to have her literally say it's a trap, the doors open, and then they all just immediately walk in. No good. No good. I feel like I've mentioned this, but I wrote down, again, new zombies equals bad CGI. I think specifically when the dogs showed up. And it's like, I like the zombie dogs. They've been in a bunch of these movies. I was excited when they showed up again. And then the head split and these weird other things come out. And I'm like, why? You used real dogs in the other movies, so those were the best looking monsters. And now, for no reason, you've converted them to these CGI messes that don't look good. Okay, a few more here. We've got, why does throwing sunglasses do anything? So, final battle, the bad guy is fighting Claire and Chris, and he takes off his sunglasses and throws them their direction. And for some reason, that takes all of their attention, and Chris even makes the effort to catch the sunglasses. And I guess we don't know at that point that he's got the super speed, because I was confused as to how he got to them so fast, but then we see it more later. So I guess it was just a distraction technique, and regardless of whether he caught them or not, their attention would have been diverted for a second, and that would have been enough. But in the moment, it felt very strange. I was like, why is he throwing his sunglasses? Again, just weird, slow-mo for no reason. And then I put Matrix much, and I had to double check, because I was pretty sure, like, this movie came out over a decade after The Matrix, right? And yeah, I believe this movie came out in 2010, Matrix came out in 1999, so I'm like, why are we doing this Matrix ripoff right now? You've got the villain in the sunglasses, all this slow-mo, dodging bullets, and I'm like, when did this become a Matrix movie? When did this not become a zombie movie anymore? Yeah, I didn't like this movie very much. And then, so they take care of him. He goes away, pulse, whatever. And then Alice gets on the broadcast, and she repeats the broadcast. You know, we've got food, shelter, blah, blah, blah. And she says, there is no infection here. And then she even repeats it and says it again. There is no infection here. I'm like, Bennett was clearly infected, and you left him alive, and then we don't see what happens to him, but it's implied that he's getting attacked by zombies that are on your ship. There's absolutely infection there. What are you talking about? And then it cuts, and then we get a mid-credit scene. And I've checked all of these for mid-credits and post-credit scenes. This is the first one that has a mid-credit scene. And seems to be setting up what happens in Part 5. Is Part 5 going to pick up right after the end, like Part 2 did from Part 1? Or are we going to jump forward and not see what happens? It's unclear. There's not really a strong pattern here. I was surprised because the director from the first one I knew was back for the fourth one, so I thought it would be more like the first one, but it's not. And so I feel like the third one, I had a lot of negative things to say about it, but I think I enjoyed that one the most mostly just because of the setting and the look with the cool trench coat and everything. And then this one, I feel like I kept saying, it did this thing right, it did this thing right, and there weren't as many negative things that I said about it. I just didn't respond to it as well. So yeah, I'm being, I guess, a little bit contradictory. But I guess that just goes to show that movies can do a lot of things right and still just not be a good movie. And movies can do a lot of things wrong and just be a good movie. And so it's not all about the things that you do right versus the things that you do wrong. It's just about the experience of watching the movie. And watching 3 was a really fun experience. Watching this one was really boring. So I'm hopeful for part 5. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But those are my thoughts on part 4, Resident Evil Afterlife. Let's move on to part 5. Hey, it's me, Sam Tom from the future again, recording an outro that's going to be on all these videos about Resident Evil. So if you think you've already seen this, you probably have. Apologies if that video ended strangely or abruptly, because again, I thought there would be more in the video, and there's not. This is it. So those were my thoughts on whichever Resident Evil movie I was talking about in that video. Feel free to tell me your thoughts, but that's all I have. Thank you for watching, and have a good day. And if you haven't watched the rest of my Resident Evil, I can't speak! Check out my other videos. Thank you. Bye.